5,100 meters above sea level and in the middle of the Andes. That is exactly where La Rinconada is located, the city that is the highest inhabited area in the world. 300 meters above Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in Europe, a city has been created there that offers only absolutely hostile conditions. And yet, numerous Peruvians have been attracted to this city for years, even though even the most experienced climbers advise against living there. In this video, we want to show you the extreme life in La Rinconada, the highest city in the world. Apart from the harsh weather conditions, there is one thing that gives all the inhabitants hope for a better life and that they can only find there. At the same time, however, there are also terrible dark sides, many crimes, and other scandals. So if you want to know what it's like to live in one of the most extreme cities in the world, then stay tuned here at Wise Fool. Before we take a look at what a typical day in La Rinconada looks like, let's start with some information about the mountain town. La Rinconada has only been around as a town for about 15 years. Before that, there were only a few people living there who were prospecting for gold in the mountain ranges. However, when the price of gold rose by 300% between 2001 and 2008, more and more people decided to take the plunge and seek their fortune above the clouds. According to the authorities' estimates, around 50,000 people now live in La Rinconada, and almost all of them work in a large gold mine. This also means that there is no other major economic sector in La Rinconada apart from gold mining. However, it is by no means easy to get there. If you want to get there, you'll have to make a long, extremely winding drive, which is possible on barely developed roads along numerous canyons. Most people are unable to cope with the conditions on the climb and suffer from nausea, headaches, and sometimes even fainting. The reason for this is that the oxygen content at an altitude of 5,000 meters is 50% lower than usual. This makes breathing extremely difficult, and many parts of the body are not supplied with sufficient oxygen. However, if you do make it to the top, you are greeted at the beginning by giant landscapes of rubbish. In a moment, we will explain why these are there and why the inhabitants of La Rinconada have an average life expectancy of only 35 years. But first, let's start with a usual day in this special town. For the men of the town, the day usually starts at 6 in the morning with the trip to work. That means they all go to the same gold mine owned by a Peruvian company to dig for gold by hand, doing the hardest manual labor. However, the low oxygen content makes it even more difficult than in other parts of the world. With tingling feet and churning stomachs, they initially work for 5 to 6 hours in a mine tunnel. However, this is done under conditions that should no longer exist. The mine forces the workers to work for 30 days a month completely without pay. They are then allowed to use the 31st day to mine gold for themselves. If they find something, they are allowed to keep it and sell it. It sounds illegal, and it is. This way of working is illegal in Peru. However, as there are only a few police in town, and it is pretty much an illegal area, the mine managers can do whatever they want. In case of trouble, they even threaten workers with machine guns if they protest about working conditions or try to get some gold while they are working. These rules also mean that the workers always carry any piece of gold they are allowed to keep for themselves back on their bodies. However, this does not protect them from theft and violence. Miners often steal from each other and do not hesitate to attack with a knife. In addition, drugs have been spreading in La Rinconada for some time, as many workers can only endure the harsh conditions if they are high. In addition to crime and the lack of a functioning police force, there is another problem in the city that is even more serious, but more on that in a moment. Before the lunch break, workers go outside for the morning shift. This means they have to wash dirt and rocks in the open in the hope that some gold will be found there. There are two problems with this. First, the maximum temperature is 5 degrees during the day, as the city is very high, despite Peru's tropical location. Secondly, very few of the workers wear gloves, so they regularly get frostbite on their hands. Most workers are between the ages of 30 and 60, but there are some who go to work to La Rinconada at the age of 21 to finance their studies. However, it is more than doubtful that this will happen because during the washing operations, they come into daily contact with highly toxic materials such as mercury or cyanide, which are supposed to help separate the gold from the other rocks. Without gloves or a respirator mask, however, this can be extremely dangerous, as even the slightest contact with these elements can often lead to serious health consequences. If one avoids these consequences, he can visit one of the bars in the city center at lunchtime. Anyone who thinks that this is a normal district where you can relax is very much mistaken. The center of La Rinconada hides some dark secrets. Before we get to those, however, we return to the mine. There's another problem there that we haven't yet touched on: the totally unsafe working conditions. There are no breathing masks or safety helmets and other safety measures such as structural analysis of the mine galleries. That is why, tragically, dozens of people die in the mines of La Rinconada every year. Those who survive usually have two choices. Either on the 31st working day, the gold they have mined is exchanged for a salary of usually $500 to $1,000, or they participate in one of the numerous scientific studies conducted at La Rinconada. For several years, scientists from around the world have been investigating how the inhabitants managed to survive under these inhumane conditions. One of the things they have discovered is that the residents' bodies adapt to the harsh conditions over time. For example, a resident has 80% red blood cells, while a normal person has only 40%. This allows people to supply their bodies with oxygen despite harsh conditions. However, it also means that some diseases, such as permanent high blood pressure or blood thinning, are accelerated. Problems you don't really want to have in a city without a hospital and far from civilizations. This is probably the biggest problem in the city. There is only one doctor who can treat a maximum of 10 to 12 patients a day. And it's not just the men in the mines. The women in La Rinconada are also exposed to numerous dangers. While their husbands are still at the mine in the afternoons, women are not allowed to work for traditional reasons and usually take care of everything else. Thus, they often try to secretly find gold in the remaining rocks. At the same time, they try to prepare dinner or take care of the children. There is only one primary school and no secondary school, which means that after the age of 10, the children either have to move or work in the mines, or they have to help the women in two particularly exhausting jobs. Due to numerous accidents and robberies, there is a cemetery in La Rinconada that is home to hundreds of dead. When the cemetery is not taken care of, the young men and women look for useful items in the garbage. As has already been reported, garbage not only accumulates in open spaces outside the city, but also in every alley, no matter how small. As 20 tons of garbage is created for every 8 grams of gold mined, the city is drowning in waste that not only destroys nature, but is also responsible for numerous odors and toxic gases. Nevertheless, all the workers are eager to finish their work at some point. Some go home to their families or go to a concert. Others meet downtown to drink or even go to a brothel. However, that's where the dark side of the city comes into play. There is no running water in La Rinconada, and only very few streets have electricity. This means that diseases spread much faster than in other cities, particularly in the Red Lanterns area. Working in sanitary conditions are disastrous, and the women who work there often suffer from serious illnesses and exploitative bosses. On the other hand, even the toughest workers often do not dare to enter the dark alleys of the city, as they are attacked by other workers or even by organized gangs, so that in case of theft, they will have worked for a whole month for nothing. Those who manage to return home safely, however, have to fight the freezing cold every night. Without heating, the cold reaches minus 20 degrees every night in homes at altitudes above 5,000 meters. Those who survive it get up the next morning and start the day all over again with the same routine. Tell us what you think about life in La Rinconada in the comments. Leave a like if you found the video interesting and subscribe. See you next time here at Wise Fool.